Okay, time to talk Jane Austen again. Hi guys, I'm Liz. Today I am back with another video about Jane Austen Variations. If you've not seen the first video where I kind of explain what those are and tell you about my top 10 favorites, I will link it somewhere up here for you to take a look at that. And I would recommend you check it out because I did recommend a bunch of books there. None of those are duplicated with the books that are here, although there almost were, because apparently there are a couple that I like enough that I was going to put them on both top 10 lists. So the reason I wanted to make this video today, which I'm sure you've seen by the title, is Jane Austen Variations that are under 250 pages, so short ones, is that I've found that when I get into a reading slump, or I'm just not in the mood for anything in particular, or any reason why I just haven't been reading a whole lot, I find that these, especially the short ones, are really good for kind of breaking up my reading habits, kind of a palate cleanser between different books or whatever. I think because it's a familiar storyline, you kind of know what you're going to get, even if the actual plot is going to be a little different. You at least know that you were, for the most part, going in for an Elizabeth and Darcy tale, and they're going to end up together, and you're just going to kind of see the circumstances as they go. So you kind of know what you're getting, kind of like with any romance novel. You know that the two people are going to get together if it's actually a romance novel. But anyway, I just find that these in particular are really good for breaking up a reading slump. I have had, over the last probably 6 weeks, a couple of periods where I was just like, oh, I don't feel like reading anything, either because I had just read a really bad book or because I'd read an amazing book and just had trouble deciding what to read next. So these are my top 10 favorite books based on Pride and Prejudice. These are variations, not continuations, not adaptations. These are variations on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. They are in no particular order, mostly, although I did save my couple of favorites for the very end. First is Waking to Mr. Darcy by Leanie Brown. Elizabeth is injured on a walk and has to stay alone overnight in a cabin with Darcy and Bingley while they weather a storm. Second is To Be Mistress of Pemberley by Charlotte Elliott. Elizabeth is injured on a walk and has to stay alone overnight in a cabin with Darcy while they weather a storm. No, seriously, it's not the same story. This is why. After that, Caroline Bingley sees Elizabeth and calls her out in front of the others for having been, out in the woods at night with someone that she didn't see. And Darcy has to admit that it was him and offer marriage. The Best of Relations by Catherine Bilson. I call this story Mrs. Gardiner Fixes Everything. It's how things would be different if Elizabeth's Derbyshire aunt knew Darcy and his family much better than she did in the original, and also knew things about Wickham. Entanglements of Honor by Renata McMahon and Summer Hanford. After a fire at Netherfield Park, Darcy and Bingley end up feeling honor-bound to offer marriage to the opposite sisters. I will say that these two authors do co-author quite a few Jane Austen variation books, from very, very short to novel length, but I do think they have quite a few of the very short ones. So if you're looking for somebody who, generally speaking, is very good and you can consistently find a bunch of short stories, I would say that they are good ones to check out. There have been a few of theirs that I haven't cared for as much as others, but overall the quality is very high on them. Next is Caroline's Fate by Elaine Jenkins. Caroline Bingley attempts to compromise Mr. Darcy by climbing into his bedroom at Netherfield Park, and things don't go to plan. A Better Understanding by Jennifer Kay. During their dance at the Netherfield Ball, Elizabeth is much more frank and forthcoming during their conversation, and Darcy kind of gets an early clue to her real feelings. Bluebells in the Morning by Carolyn McCrory. When Darcy arrives at the parsonage to propose to Elizabeth, he finds her minutes after she's learned that her sister has died. During the time that he escorts her to London, he learns something of the error of his ways and is able to use her time in mourning to reevaluate his life. The Colonel's Timely Bride by Dana R. Lynn. This one is definitely one of the wacky ones of the bunch. So this is a modern-day girl who gets sucked into Jane Austen time. She kind of gets some help from Georgiana Darcy, and probably Colonel Fitzwilliam has something to do with it, if you just look at the title. Next is Remember the Past by Maria Grace. This is one of those books that really borrows the characters and sticks them in a different story, but it's still really good, even though I don't always love those. I love this one. Elizabeth's father is a retired Navy admiral who moves his family to Derbyshire after a scandal in London and meets up with and starts associating with his neighbors, the widower Darcy, and his mother-in-law, Lady Catherine. A noteworthy courtship by Laura Sanchez. Darcy and Elizabeth learn about each other and themselves through anonymous letters that they exchange by placing them in a book at the Meryton bookshop. Anonymous meaning that at first they don't realize that they're talking to each other. And then my two favorites on this list, and that is The Last Man in the World by Abigail Reynolds, because I can't have a list of these without an Abigail Reynolds book on these. She is definitely my favorite author of these types of stories. Elizabeth doesn't have time to refuse Darcy's proposal before he kisses her in front of his family, and that locks him into a marriage that Elizabeth resents at every turn. And last but definitely not least, A Fine Joke by Amy DeRazio. After his failed proposal, Darcy wakes up in his London townhome with no memory of how he got there, and after a visit from a physician learns that he's dying of a mysterious illness. He then proceeds to kind of evaluate his life and decide how he wants to live out his last few months, which definitely involves having Elizabeth in his life. And he doesn't die, I promise. It's a joke. Again, look at the title. So that is all. That is my top 10 favorite books under 250 words, Jane Austen Variations. I hope that, you can grab one of these when you're just really not sure what to read, not sure, kind of what you're in the mood for, or if you're just generally needing a palate cleanser or something to pull you out of a reading slump, and that you really enjoy some of these like I have. I've read several of these multiple times, actually a lot of these multiple times. Maybe even all of them multiple times. I honestly couldn't tell you. Definitely I read the Abigail Reynolds at least probably 10 times, I swear. But yeah, if you've read any of these, or if you end up reading any of these based on this recommendation, please comment down below and let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, or if you just generally are looking for recommendations, or if you have recommendations for me of these types of books, because I have read quite a few of them, but I definitely have not read all of them, so I really want to chat about them. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a great reading week. If you like this, give me a thumbs up, and if you want to talk more about books and Jane Austen Variations in the future, I hope you will subscribe. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. Bye.